Could you say a bit about the work that you've published through GIA Publications? And I know that gets into many audiences, schools, universities, but also many churches there, and say a little bit about the vision for that work that you've had.
Well, you know what, the GIA has been a tremendous blessing in a lot of ways because of the fact that it has done as much as it has to nurture musical, again, with the name GIA, and I think you might know what the original meaning of those letters was. It was Gregorian Institute of America.
That's
well,
right.
it's moved way from Gregorian to anything, and happily so, because they really have done a great job of not only dealing with music that comes from certain kinds of cultural influences, but also for graded levels for kids. I've had the wonderful opportunity to serve on committees dealing with appropriate pieces for smaller kids in the context of things that are used for pedagogical purposes in teaching, whether it's choral music or solo music for the voice or for the piano. So to have the Morehouse Choral Series come out of that, I am immensely proud. Before that series, however, I was engaged with GIA with my own work. A lot of those pieces were because of conferences, high schools, and so forth, where they wanted the music, and GIA was diligent enough to say, well, we're going to get it out. What's the date? What is the deadline? And it happened. You know, I mean, it matters when you're selling a few thousand copies, you know, and it's a large conference. And so that is how some of them came into being, because they were pieces that were needed for certain kinds of conferences. But a lot of them were because of that dimension of church and church music. Jimmy Abington, Dr. Jimmy Abington, whom I'm sure you know, has did a masterful job of sort of shopping these things around churches across the country in a way that allow church musicians to realize these pieces are accessible. And accessibility is an important word in terms of GIA's work. It has done things that, you know, if you look at it on paper, it sometimes looks far more difficult and challenging. And you realize when you hear it, oh my God, this is something I do every week. But it's been that kind of thing that has allowed it to circulate more broadly. And but the Morehouse series, though, it was intended to represent a kind of a higher offering of music with some greater challenges to the depth of one's opining, not something that is as accessible as what you would want for a service. You don't want to, how should I say it, inundate a person with having to delve too far into intellectual pursuit in a worship service. But outside of that, sometimes it's a healthy thing to be able to sit and ponder and consider things that are perhaps a greater extension of one's thought process than that which is simply existential.
And all that, both arms of that work, creating space for younger composers and arrangers to sort of participate in this larger legacy too, right? I mean, there's a lot of different voices there. And,
young composers, absolutely, diverse in the sense that there are as many original compositions as there are arrangements, and I think that is an extremely important thing that needs to be the next leg of where we go. More needs to be done to nurture the output of young composers. There's this joke about people becoming so caught up in this sort of conservative paradigm of what is good music that one of my friends put it, well, unfortunately, the piece is not going to survive because the composer hasn't been dead long enough.
Oh, right,
so,
right. Yeah, right.
But that is unfortunate because it does not, that attitude doesn't make room for these younger people with some wonderful ideas, even in terms of the setting of the spiritual, which is something that I've often talked about. It can be creatively done without losing its basic flavor and intention.